What if everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle's motherhood was a carefully crafted illusion? In a shocking twist that sent royal watchers and media insiders into a frenzy, Prince Harry has broken his silence, admitting that Meghan Markle is not the biological mother of Archie Harrison. Now, with reports confirming the child was born via surrogacy, Meghan has allegedly filed for divorce, and the truth behind the Sussex fairy tale is unraveling fast. Why was this kept secret for so long? What really happened behind closed doors, and why is it all exploding now? Stay tuned, because the receipts, the silence, and the betrayal are more devastating than anyone imagined. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. There are moments in history when a single sentence changes everything, when a whisper becomes a roar, when a personal revelation threatens to unravel an empire of illusion. In this moment, Prince Harry allegedly breaking his silence to admit that Meghan Markle is not the biological mother of their son, Archie Harrison, may be one of those moments. In a time when secrets are currency and image is everything, the unmasking of a truth this deep and this personal does more than fracture a marriage. It shakes the very foundation of public trust, royal legacy, and the mythology that surrounded one of the most high-profile births in modern memory. No one expected this. The world had watched as Meghan cradled her growing belly in 2019, as she appeared glowing in maternity wear at royal engagements, as she posed with Harry and Archie for that first carefully controlled post-birth photo. Everything appeared in order. Everything was deliberate. And everything, if Harry's reported confession is to be believed, may have been a performance rooted in deception. But why would they go to such lengths? Why fake a pregnancy? And why now, after all this time, is Harry allegedly coming forward? The story begins not in a hospital ward, but in the carefully crafted world of media strategy and royal public relations. From the moment Meghan joined the royal family, every move she made was scrutinized, every gesture dissected. And when the news of her pregnancy broke in October 2018 during their royal tour of Australia, the world rejoiced. It was painted as the final thread tying Meghan to the House of Windsor, a duchess with a baby on the way, uniting tradition and modernity. But behind the scenes, according to multiple sources and emerging reports, something was amiss. There were whispers, rumors, glimpses of inconsistencies. For example, the location and details of Archie's birth remained unusually vague. Meghan and Harry deviated from royal tradition by refusing to do the traditional post-delivery hospital steps with the newborn. There were no media outside the hospital. No press release when she went into labor. No firm confirmation about which medical team oversaw the birth. Later, the press discovered the official birth certificate listed Portland Hospital, a private facility far from the public eye. Still, the public assumed privacy was the reason. After all, this was the couple who had always demanded control. But there were visual anomalies too. Videos of Meghan's public appearances during her pregnancy sparked fierce debate. Footage showing her baby bump appearing to shift unusually, moments when the shape seemed inconsistent, or her movement overly unrestricted, all became the subject of tabloid obsession. Some dismissed the speculation as conspiracy theorists spiraling out of control. But others, including former palace staff and medical observers, started asking questions that couldn't be easily dismissed. And now, those questions have resurfaced with renewed fury. The catalyst? Reports that Harry, under intense emotional strain, may have finally admitted to close friends, or in a private conversation that was later leaked, that Meghan was not Archie's biological mother, and that the child had in fact been born via surrogacy. The alleged revelation, if true, opens a storm of legal, personal, and ethical concerns, not just about the nature of Archie's birth, but about the years of public storytelling that followed. Because if the Duchess never carried the child herself, the pregnancy narrative becomes not only misleading, it becomes a deliberate misrepresentation of reality. And now, with divorce reportedly on the table, this revelation takes on new urgency. Sources claim Meghan was furious upon discovering Harry had opened up about the surrogacy. Some allege that it wasn't the fact he shared the truth that enraged her. It was that he did it without consulting her first, breaking a pact they had allegedly maintained since Archie's birth. That agreement? Silence. Absolute silence. Control the narrative. Never confirm. Never deny. Just smile for the cameras and let public curiosity tire itself out. But silence, it seems, was too heavy for Harry to bear. Insiders say the breakdown between the couple didn't happen overnight. Rather, it was a slow erosion built on hidden truths, mounting pressure, and an increasingly strained public image. Harry, always seen as the emotionally open one, had reportedly begun to show signs of emotional exhaustion, guilt, anxiety, and internal conflict. He was, according to those who observed him, caught between a desire to protect his wife and a gnawing discomfort about the deception that surrounded Archie's origin. As the couple's popularity faltered and their once lucrative media deals lost steam, the illusion began to crack. What's more, the issue may have had less to do with the surrogacy itself. After all, surrogacy is a legal and accepted path to parenthood around the world, and more to do with the concealment of it. If Harry and Meghan had simply come forward and acknowledged using a surrogate, many speculate that the public would have embraced their honesty. But by choosing secrecy and portraying Meghan as having physically carried the child, they opened themselves to accusations of deceit. For a couple who often claimed to fight for transparency, this was seen by many as hypocrisy at its worst. And now, the fallout appears to be landing squarely on their marriage. Reports of Meghan requesting divorce have begun circulating across tabloids and insider news sources. If true, the move would be monumental, not just personally, but publicly. Meghan and Harry have marketed themselves as a united front, two exiled royals against the institution that rejected them. They branded themselves as survivors, as truth-tellers, as partners in life and mission. A divorce would unravel that carefully crafted image and leave behind a pile of uncomfortable questions. Chief among them, what exactly happened behind the scenes when Archie was born? As we continue through this video, we'll break down the timeline of events that led to this moment, examine the visual and legal clues that point to a surrogacy arrangement, and analyze why Harry may have chosen to speak now. We'll explore Meghan's potential motivations for pursuing divorce, what this means for Archie and Lilibet, and how this revelation could impact their titles, legal status, and inheritance rights. We'll also unpack the palace's response, because make no mistake, even in exile, the actions of the Sussexes send tremors through the royal family. But first, let's return to the moment that set this avalanche in motion. Harry's alleged confession. The one that broke the wall of secrecy and triggered what may become one of the most high-profile and consequential royal divorces in modern history. Was it a slip under emotional pressure? A calculated move to reclaim the truth? Or the act of a man who could no longer carry the burden of a lie? The answers may not be simple. But one thing is clear. The story of Meghan, Harry, and Archie is not the fairy tale we were once told. It's something far more complicated, far more human, and far more shocking than anyone ever imagined. Before the rift, before the allegations, before whispers of surrogacy and divorce darkened the horizon, there was a love story. A dazzling, unstoppable, media-saturating love story that seemed to challenge convention and redefine what the British monarchy could look like. Prince Harry, the rebellious spare-turned-veteran and activist, had fallen in love with Meghan Markle, a biracial American actress with charisma, confidence, and a sharp sense of purpose. It was the union no one saw coming, yet one the world couldn't look away from. When the news broke in 2016 that Prince Harry was dating Meghan Markle, it sent shockwaves through both media circles and Buckingham Palace. Meghan, a star on the legal drama Suits, was the antithesis of the traditional royal consort. She was divorced, older than Harry, independent, and politically outspoken. And yet, she radiated elegance, style, and composure. In public, the chemistry between the two was undeniable. For a monarchy long accused of being too stiff, too white, too old-fashioned, this was something refreshingly new. Their courtship moved swiftly. By November 2017, they were engaged. The engagement interview, aired to millions, painted a picture of romantic destiny. Harry described seeing Meghan for the first time and knowing she was the one. Meghan shared how the royal family had welcomed her warmly. There were candlelit dinners, cozy weekends at Nottingham Cottage, and a shared commitment to humanitarian work. The couple presented themselves not just as lovers, but as a partnership rooted in purpose. The message was clear. This wasn't just about romance. This was about change. And change, it seemed, arrived on the wings of their wedding. On May 19, 2018, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were married in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. It was a globally televised event watched by an estimated 1.9 billion people. But this was no traditional royal wedding. The ceremony included a gospel choir, a sermon by American Bishop Michael Curry, and subtle nods to Meghan's heritage and values. She walked down the aisle partly alone, wore a veil embroidered with the flowers of the Commonwealth, and became the Duchess of Sussex. It was a carefully choreographed statement. This royal couple was writing their own script. From the outset, Harry and Meghan's love story was tightly fused with public messaging. They weren't just married, they were a movement. Their speeches championed mental health, gender equality, racial justice. They toured Australia, Fiji, Tonga, and New Zealand as newlyweds in late 2018, drawing huge crowds and adulation. During this trip, it was announced that Meghan was pregnant. The world rejoiced. The fairy tale had a new chapter. A baby was on the way. And yet, behind the scenes, fault lines were beginning to form. Even before the child's birth, palace staff reportedly struggled to accommodate Meghan's demands and media strategies. There were rumors of disagreements, resignations, and tears over a bridesmaid dress fitting for Princess Charlotte. The media, once mostly supportive, began turning. Headlines questioned Meghan's temperament, her spending habits, and her approach to royal protocol. But supporters insisted she was being unfairly targeted. Racism and classism, they argued, played a role in the scrutiny she faced. Harry, protective and emotionally reactive, issued a rare statement through Kensington Palace condemning the racist and sexist abuse his wife endured. He made it clear he would not let history repeat itself. He would not let the press destroy Meghan as they had his mother. This was the emotional bedrock of their relationship. For Harry, Meghan was not just a spouse, she was a symbol of redemption, of escape from a system he had long loathed. For Meghan, Harry represented access to global influence, a chance to use her voice on the world's biggest stage. Together, they became a brand. And that brand would soon be tested by one of the most significant events in royal history, the birth of their son, Archie. On May 6, 2019, Meghan and Harry announced the birth of their first child, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. But unlike the public births of previous royal children, including William and Kate's 3 children, Archie's arrival was cloaked in mystery. There was no public hospital appearance. The media was not alerted until hours after the birth had reportedly taken place. Even basic information, who delivered the baby, where it happened, when labor began, was omitted or delayed. Instead, Harry stepped in front of a stable at Windsor Castle for a brief and informal press appearance. He looked ecstatic but nervous. His words were sparse, his tone measured. Meghan would later appear days later, holding the baby in a brief photo call. The images were heavily controlled. Photographers were chosen in advance. Questions were minimal. The media began asking questions. Why was there such secrecy? Was Meghan's birth experience traumatic, or was something else being hidden? At first, these questions were brushed aside. The Sussexes said they wanted privacy. That seemed reasonable. But then came the inconsistencies. The royal communications team issued conflicting reports about the hospital. The birth certificate listed the Portland hospital, expensive, private, and not aligned with earlier speculation. No doctors were publicly named. No staff ever came forward. For a royal birth, the entire situation felt off. Still, the fairy tale continued. Harry and Meghan took baby Archie on a royal tour to South Africa in September 2019, where they continued their humanitarian work and shared family moments. Yet, it was clear that something deeper was brewing. In a now infamous interview during the tour, Meghan admitted to journalist Tom Bradby that she was not okay. Harry, too, seemed emotional. The pressures of royal life, public scrutiny, and the relentless pace were weighing heavily on both of them. By early 2020, everything changed. Harry and Meghan announced they were stepping back from royal duties. Dubbed Megxit, the announcement shocked the world and reportedly blindsided the royal family. The couple declared their intention to become financially independent, split time between North America and the UK, and pursue their own ventures. The monarchy, caught off guard, negotiated a formal separation from royal duties. Titles were retained, but honors were relinquished. The couple relocated to Canada, and then to Montecito, California. In the years that followed, the Sussexes built an empire of media deals, interviews, and philanthropic branding. They signed with Netflix, Spotify, and created the Archwell Foundation. They sat down with Oprah in 2021 for a bombshell interview that accused the royal family of racism, neglect, and cruelty. Meghan's mental health, Archie's lack of a title, and the couple's suffering were center stage. The world was once again divided, some seeing them as victims of a cold institution, others viewing them as entitled rebels rewriting truth. But amidst all of this, the story of Archie remained strangely untouched. While Lilibet's birth in 2021 received similar privacy treatment, it was Archie's origins that continued to raise eyebrows. As the couple built their brand around authenticity and advocacy, one core piece of their public life was built on a question no one dared to answer: who, truly, gave birth to Archie? Now, with Harry reportedly admitting that Meghan is not Archie's biological mother, that question is exploding to the forefront. And suddenly, the love story that had once captivated the world is turning inside out. The very foundation of their public identity, the happy, modern, purpose-driven family, is being called into question. The fairy tale is unraveling. Because if Meghan's pregnancy was a deception, and if their partnership was built on mutual silence, then the fracture we are now witnessing isn't just personal, it's structural. It's about truth and trust. It's about how far two people went to maintain an image, and what happens when that image begins to crumble. From the earliest whispers of Meghan Markle's pregnancy, the narrative surrounding the arrival of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was tightly managed, cautiously curated, and oddly impenetrable. In royal history, few births have been cloaked in such a veil of secrecy. It was not simply discretion. It was a deliberate strategy of control, secrecy, and narrative shaping that has since invited endless scrutiny, speculation, and, most recently, potentially explosive revelations. Traditionally, royal births follow a well-established pattern. When a royal baby is due, the palace releases updates to the press about the expected hospital, the medical team, and the arrangements for a public appearance. Crowds gather outside the hospital. Media outlets prepare for round-the-clock coverage. And once the baby arrives, the public gets a carefully timed first look, usually within 24 hours, with the mother and father waving from the hospital steps. That's how it happened with Princess Diana and both of her sons, William and Harry. It's how Kate Middleton, now Princess of Wales, introduced George, Charlotte, and Louis to the world. But when it came to Meghan and Harry's first child, all standard expectations were shattered. On May 6, 2019, Buckingham Palace released a short statement. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex was safely delivered of a son at 0526 HRS this morning. Yet, it soon became apparent that this statement had been released several hours after the actual birth occurred. In fact, Harry had already given interviews by the time the press release went out. There was confusion, contradiction, and no photographic evidence of the baby's birth or arrival at any hospital. Initially, the public assumed Meghan had given birth at Frogmore Cottage, their residence in Windsor. Rumors circulated that a holistic birthing team had been assembled there, and that Meghan had opted for a water birth, consistent with her interest in natural wellness. But later, the birth certificate revealed something very different. Archie had been born at the Portland Hospital in London, a high-end, ultra-private medical facility favored by celebrities. This discrepancy opened the first real crack in the official narrative. If Meghan had gone to Portland Hospital, why the subterfuge? Why the delay in informing the public? Why not follow the same media protocol the palace had always used? What followed only deepened the mystery. Unlike William and Kate's open hospital steps moment, Meghan and Harry declined to pose with their newborn outside Portland. Instead, 2 days later, a brief photo call was held at St. George's Hall, Windsor Castle. The scene was controlled, sterile, and visually cold. Meghan and Harry appeared for just a few minutes, holding the tightly swaddled baby. Meghan wore a sleeveless white trench-style dress. Harry stood beside her, beaming yet nervous. The press was limited to 1 or 2 questions. Photographers noted something odd. The baby's face was barely visible. His features were obscured by the blanket and his parents' strategic positioning. Unlike prior royal newborn presentations, this felt staged to the point of theatrical minimalism. Royal watchers and medical experts began dissecting Meghan's appearance. She looked radiant but surprisingly slim, composed, and without any visible signs of postpartum swelling or exhaustion. There was no sign of recovery-related discomfort, no hospital bracelet, and no hint that she had recently delivered a child. While this could have been written off as excellent styling and personal health, the questions didn't stop there. Over the next several months, the couple made very few public appearances with Archie. Unlike William and Kate, who were often seen with their children at public events, Meghan and Harry kept Archie largely hidden. Photos released to the public were carefully selected, usually showing Archie from behind or in shadow. No candid press moments. No casual family outings. Every glimpse was pre-approved. What emerged instead was a narrative crafted almost entirely through storytelling. In interviews and speeches, Meghan spoke about motherhood. She referenced late-night feedings, postpartum life, and parenting challenges. Harry called fatherhood life-changing and spoke of protecting Archie from the glare of media scrutiny. Their words painted a picture of relatable young parents navigating fame with compassion and intentionality. But behind the curtain, contradictions continued to pile up. One particularly striking inconsistency emerged around the timeline of Meghan's pregnancy. Photos taken during her royal engagements showed varying bump sizes that defied natural progression. In one instance, Meghan was photographed bending down in heels while heavily pregnant, something that would typically be difficult or even medically discouraged in the final trimester. In another clip, her baby bump appeared to shift unnaturally as she walked or turned. Body language analysts and social media users speculated whether a prosthetic had been used. At the time, these claims were largely dismissed by mainstream media as outlandish conspiracy theories. But as more videos emerged showing odd moments, such as Meghan cradling a visibly folding bump or adjusting it mid-interview, the chatter grew louder. Even prominent journalists began quietly asking questions, though few dared to voice them openly. By the end of 2019, questions about Archie's birth had been firmly swept under the rug by the mainstream press. With the couple's transition to North America underway, public attention shifted to their departure from royal life and the infamous Megxit headlines. But the inconsistencies remained like unswept dust, buried beneath more prominent headlines, but never forgotten by those who had been paying close attention. Then came the Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan in 2022. Viewers expected it to offer deeper insights into their family life, especially Archie's birth. Instead, what they got was more curation, black and white footage, selective home videos, and continued avoidance of the specifics around Meghan's delivery. There were no hospital photos, no footage of labor, nothing to support the claim that Meghan had given birth herself. It was an absence felt by many, and it reignited long-dormant suspicions. The final element in this tightly controlled narrative was the role of the palace, or rather, the lack of it. Typically, royal births involve multiple layers of documentation, with senior royal aides and medical personnel offering confirmations. In Archie's case, no such corroboration was provided. No midwives or doctors spoke to the press. No official witnesses came forward. In a monarchy obsessed with protocol, this silence was unprecedented. Years later, the silence is now louder than ever. If Prince Harry did, in fact, admit that Meghan is not Archie's biological mother and that surrogacy was involved, then the entire public narrative presented to the world in 2019 collapses. Every image, every interview, every symbolic hand placed over a supposed baby bump becomes part of a carefully managed illusion. It raises difficult questions, not just about why they chose secrecy, but whether they deliberately misled the public. Was the decision to keep surrogacy a secret driven by fear of criticism, royal tradition, control, or something deeper? An identity crisis tied to Meghan's role in the monarchy, her perception in the media, or a calculated effort to protect the brand they were building. It also casts doubt on other related moments, Archie's christening, for example, which was held privately and without public attendance. The photographs were posed, the godparents were never officially disclosed, and the event's participants remained under wraps. Once again, everything was contained, managed, and filtered through the Sussexes' lens of selective transparency. And now, with the alleged revelation breaking loose, it seems the truth may have finally caught up with them. This section of the story forces us to confront a larger truth: the public narrative was never organic. It was constructed, down to the location, the timing, the images, and the silences. Whether Meghan carried Archie or not, the story that was presented to the public left gaps so wide that questions were inevitable. The more they tried to suppress them, the more persistent they became. If the real story is one of surrogacy, secrecy, and private deals sealed behind the walls of royal palaces and California mansions, then it calls into question everything we were led to believe, not just about Archie, but about the values of the couple who insisted they wanted to be real and transparent. Because the truth isn't just about whether Meghan gave birth. It's about the kind of trust the public places in figures who claim to live authentically while crafting an alternate reality behind closed doors. Long before Prince Harry's alleged admission that Meghan Markle was not the biological mother of Archie Harrison, speculation surrounding the true nature of Archie's birth had been gaining traction in quiet, persistent waves. What began as online whispers during Meghan's pregnancy evolved into tabloid fodder, then into whispered debate within certain media and royal-watching circles. While many dismissed the speculation as absurd or rooted in bias, others insisted that something about the official narrative had never quite added up. Now, in the wake of explosive allegations, those early rumors take on new relevance and demand a closer look. The first seeds of doubt were planted almost immediately after the royal couple announced Meghan's pregnancy in October 2018 during their tour of Australia. At first, the public celebrated the news, but those observing closely noted the suddenness of the announcement, which conveniently landed just days into a high-profile, goodwill-heavy international tour. The optics were perfect: a glowing duchess, a proud prince, and a mission of service wrapped in excitement over a new life. Yet skeptics pointed out that the couple had previously been unusually vague about their plans for children. During their engagement interview, and even in their early married life, they had avoided definitive statements. The announcement's timing. During a tour intended to strengthen ties with Commonwealth nations, led some to question whether it had been strategically planned to overshadow negative coverage or boost their popularity within a fragile royal ecosystem. Shortly after, the visual anomalies began. One of the most viral videos that raised eyebrows came from Meghan's appearance at the Royal Albert Hall in January 2019. Dressed in a flowing navy gown, Meghan's stomach appeared to shift in size dramatically from one camera angle to the next. Observers noticed her ease in bending down, sitting cross-legged, and walking briskly in heels, movements that typically present difficulty during advanced stages of pregnancy. These clips were shared on social media with slow-motion breakdowns and side-by-side comparisons. Another incident occurred in February 2019 during her visit to New York for a lavish baby shower. At the time, she was presumed to be around 7 months pregnant. Yet paparazzi photos showed her moving with minimal physical strain, walking with perfectly coordinated posture, and maintaining an unusually high energy level for someone near their due date. Her stomach also appeared differently shaped in different outfits, leading to speculation that the bump was artificial or modified. During a public visit to the National Theatre in London that same month, Meghan squatted gracefully to greet children. Professional obstetricians later noted in private forums that most women in their third trimester would find such movement difficult without clear signs of discomfort. Yet Meghan did it fluidly, smiling and moving with no pause. These observations triggered the emergence of so-called bumpgate theories across royal gossip forums and certain investigative blogs. Speculation grew wilder as amateur analysts began compiling visual evidence from every appearance Meghan made between October 2018 and May 2019. They posted side-by-side shots comparing bump size, placement, and shape. Some highlighted the way her maternity outfits seemed to shift unnaturally as she walked or turned. While many considered these theories to be based on misogyny or outright conspiracy thinking, others approached the evidence with a more forensic lens. A handful of retired nurses and midwives, using pseudonyms, began commenting anonymously on forums that they found Meghan's physical behavior inconsistent with third trimester pregnancies. Their arguments weren't emotional, they were clinical, and often centered around biomechanics, posture, and physical movement. Still, the mainstream press refused to address the rumors. Outlets like the BBC, The Guardian, and the New York Times avoided the topic entirely, while others like Daily Mail and The Sun focused instead on the aesthetics of Meghan's maternity wardrobe. The public narrative remained intact. Meghan Markle was a mother-to-be, radiant and defiant against media intrusion. Then came the birth itself, and with it, more questions. The palace's vague statement about the timing and location of Archie's birth sparked renewed suspicion. Confusion erupted when it was revealed Meghan had not given birth at home in Frogmore Cottage, as previously assumed, but at Portland Hospital. There was no official media presence outside the hospital. No photos of her entering or exiting the building. No confirmation from the attending physicians. In fact, no doctors came forward publicly at all, which was highly unusual for a royal birth. Critics began to suggest that the secrecy was not merely about privacy, but concealment. By 2020, forums that had once speculated about Meghan's pregnancy were now diving into surrogacy contracts, surrogacy laws in the UK and the US. and the possible legal steps involved in listing Meghan as a legal mother even if she hadn't physically given birth. According to British law, if a surrogate gives birth to a child, she is legally considered the child's mother unless formal adoption proceedings or parental orders are filed to transfer that status to the commissioning parents. No such court filings were publicly confirmed. However, under California law, where the couple later relocated, surrogacy is more fluid, and the commissioning parents are typically listed on the birth certificate from the outset. But Archie was born in London, not California, which complicated the legal theories. One particularly controversial moment in the timeline was the delayed release of Archie's birth certificate. When it was eventually published, eagle-eyed observers noted that Meghan's name had been changed on the document after the initial filing. Initially, she was listed as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Later, this was modified to simply Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, with her first names removed entirely. While the palace insisted this was a clerical correction requested by the Sussexes, critics believed it was another sign of narrative manipulation. Some theorists speculated that removing Meghan's legal names was a way to obscure legal responsibility or parental designation. Others believed it was a symbolic distancing, an attempt to align Meghan more with her title than her personhood, perhaps to protect future legal interpretations regarding motherhood. As the rumors continued to swirl, the topic of Archie's skin tone, raised in Meghan and Harry's Oprah interview in 2021, also became the subject of renewed debate. During the interview, Meghan claimed that a member of the royal family had expressed concern about how dark the baby's skin might be. At the time, this sparked outrage and was widely interpreted as racism within the royal family. But some questioned why Meghan would raise this issue if she knew the child had been born via surrogate and possibly with a donor involved. The logic, they argued, did not align. Then came the interviews where Meghan discussed motherhood in ways that many found strangely vague. She avoided typical maternal language about labor or delivery. Her reflections were often abstract, focused more on the experience of being in the public eye than on the physical aspects of childbirth. She never described labor pain, contractions, or the hospital process. This lack of specificity stood in stark contrast to other royal mothers who had described the birthing experience in candid, even humorous ways. As the years passed, the theory of surrogacy remained a persistent but largely underground topic. Social media platforms began banning discussions about fake pregnancy or surrogacy conspiracies under misinformation policies. Videos exploring the inconsistencies were flagged or removed. Major networks refused to platform the theory, framing it as a baseless attack on Meghan's credibility. But behind closed doors, among midwives, legal scholars, and PR specialists, the questions didn't disappear. They evolved. Why had Meghan and Harry been so guarded around the birth narrative? If surrogacy had been used, why not simply say so? Why hide something legal and increasingly common in elite circles? Theories about image control began to take precedence. Meghan, some argued, needed the optics of pregnancy to solidify her place within the royal narrative. A biracial, American duchess carrying the Queen's great-grandchild presented a historic image that was both culturally potent and symbolically transformative. It was a media moment too valuable to give away. Others theorized that the royal institution had pressured the couple into secrecy, that acknowledging a surrogate birth could complicate Archie's position in the line of succession or invite legal inquiries into inheritance rights. If Meghan had used a donor egg or gestational carrier, what would that mean for Archie's titles or future responsibilities? Of course, none of these theories were ever confirmed. Until, perhaps, now. If Harry truly has confessed that Meghan did not give birth to Archie, that surrogacy was used, then the full weight of this timeline comes crashing into the present. Every questionable photo, every carefully worded press release, every avoided question now looks less like privacy and more like deliberate obfuscation. The surrogacy rumors, long ridiculed and sidelined, may be the key to understanding not just how Archie was born, but why the Sussex narrative, once so tightly sealed, is finally beginning to unravel. For years, Prince Harry had held firm, publicly defending his wife, privately shielding his children, and aggressively controlling the narrative that surrounded their post-royal life. He filed lawsuits against tabloids, cut off old friends who leaked stories, and built a protective fortress around his new family in California. But as sources now suggest, that fortress has started to crack from within. In what appears to be one of the most stunning developments in modern royal history, Prince Harry is alleged to have privately, and now reportedly publicly admitted that Meghan Markle is not the biological mother of their son, Archie Harrison. This revelation, if accurate, shatters years of storytelling and raises fundamental questions not only about trust, but about identity, legacy, and the future of their fractured union. The moment of confession reportedly took place during an intense, closed-door mediation session related to legal and financial entanglements the couple are facing, including custody considerations, charitable accountability, and long-standing inheritance disputes. The setting was not grand. No press. No flashing cameras. Just legal representatives, advisors, and a few emotionally exhausted individuals trying to untangle a web of decisions that had once been masked in royalty but now lay bare in uncertainty. According to those familiar with the situation, Prince Harry appeared withdrawn and broken during the proceedings. He was visibly shaken and spoke with hesitation but clarity. The confession reportedly came in response to a direct question about the legal status of Archie and future estate matters. Under UK and California law, biological lineage can affect claims to specific entitlements, especially when wills or trusts refer to natural offspring. I have to be honest, Harry is quoted as saying, "Meghan didn't carry Archie. We used a surrogate." Those words, simple and devastating, reportedly stunned the room into silence. More astonishingly, he did not stop there. He is said to have added, "And she's not biologically his mother either. We used a donor." To those in the room, the emotional weight of Harry's admission was overwhelming. This was not a statement made for headlines or drama. It was, reportedly, the release of a burden he had carried since before Archie's birth. And in that moment, it became clear, the elaborate narrative around Meghan's pregnancy was, in essence, a performance crafted for media, monarchy, and public consumption. This confession raises countless questions. Why now? Why not earlier? And most importantly, why was the truth hidden at all? To understand Harry's breaking point, we must revisit the immense pressure he has been under since childhood. Losing his mother at age 12, growing up under relentless media attention, and enduring the trauma of the royal fishbowl shaped a man who yearned for escape and authenticity. Meghan, for a time, provided both. She offered a new life outside the firm, a break from tradition, and a partner who seemed to share his values. But escaping the institution did not mean escaping scrutiny or responsibility. And when that reality crumbled, the audience turned. The backlash was swift, global, and complex. It exposed long-standing fault lines not only in the Sussex marriage, but in their relationship with the public. It raised ethical questions about celebrity branding, media manipulation, and parental privacy. And it revealed something many had long suspected but couldn't quite prove, that even in the age of transparency, some of the most powerful stories are illusions. The fallout is far from over. In fact, it's only just begun. While the public erupted and media outlets across the globe dissected every detail of Prince Harry's confession, the royal family's inner sanctum fell into a kind of grim, unnerving silence. Not since the explosive Oprah Winfrey interview had the monarchy faced such an emotionally radioactive event involving the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And yet, unlike the polished PR responses of the past, this time the palace's reaction was not immediately public. It was internal. It was guarded. And according to sources, it was quietly devastating. Behind the walls of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and Windsor, aides scrambled to verify the emerging reports. Unlike the carefully planned comm strategies used for prior scandals, there was no advance warning this time. The confession came not from a public platform but leaked documents and private briefings. What made it worse, from the royal family's perspective, was that they hadn't just been blindsided by the media, they had been blindsided by Harry. One senior aide, according to insider reports, remarked, "There's betrayal, and then there's this." Another described the atmosphere within the palace as somber, furious, and deeply disappointed. King Charles, who had already endured years of strained relations with Harry, is said to have reacted with a mix of sadness and quiet anger. Privately, he had hoped the storm surrounding Harry and Meghan might settle with time, that the distance between them and the institution might gradually soften through maturity, family milestones, and shifting priorities. But this latest revelation, confirming rumors that had been swirling in royal corridors since 2019, effectively shattered that hope. According to sources close to the monarch, Charles was less outraged by the use of a surrogate than by the concealment and theatricality surrounding the entire affair. It wasn't the surrogacy that disturbed him, said one longtime royal courtier. It was the deliberate deception. The performance. The staged moments that involve the entire royal machine without transparency. From the perspective of the royal household, the surrogacy revelation posed several critical issues. First, there were constitutional implications. The legitimacy of a child in the royal line of succession, while traditionally based on birth within a marriage, is still entangled with heritage, documentation, and royal protocol. The royal family had treated Archie as a legitimate descendant of Queen Elizabeth II. He had been included in royal communications, birthday tributes, and even in discussions about future royal titles. Now, with this revelation, there were quiet discussions taking place among senior advisors about whether a re-evaluation was necessary, especially if Archie was not Meghan's biological child and the surrogacy had occurred in secrecy. Second, the palace worried about precedent. What would this mean for future generations? Could another royal family member one day choose to do the same, hiding such details under the guise of privacy while leveraging royal ties for personal brand growth? The monarchy, though symbolic, functions on trust, image, and lineage. This revelation undermined all three. Prince William, reportedly, was furious. Unlike Charles, who attempted a more measured response, William's emotions were said to have boiled over the moment he received confirmation of the confession. According to someone familiar with the situation, he paced furiously in his private quarters at Kensington Palace and uttered, "He's destroyed whatever was left." To William, who had long endured his brother's choices with a mixture of anger and heartbreak, this was a line crossed. He had, insiders claim, always suspected something was amiss with Meghan's pregnancy but chose to stay silent out of respect for the institution and to protect the Queen from further distress. But now, with Harry's own words confirming the suspicions, William was said to have reached the point of no return. "It's not just a lie," he reportedly told a friend. "It's a lie that involved all of us. My children stood beside theirs. We welcomed them in. And the whole time he knew." Kate Middleton, often portrayed as the peacemaker in royal circles, was reportedly deeply saddened. She had once tried to extend an olive branch to Meghan, even after their well-publicized falling out over bridesmaid dresses and media portrayals. But this revelation, sources say, left her feeling used. She thought they were building a bridge, one aide said. But now she sees that bridge was built on a lie. The Queen consort, Camilla, was more reserved in her reaction. Known for her political instincts and decades of navigating royal drama, she reportedly advised restraint. But even she was said to have made a biting remark in private. "You can't build an empire on fiction and expect the crown to respect it." Behind the scenes, legal consultations began. The palace lawyers were brought in to evaluate whether the revelation could impact the legal status of Archie and Lilibet within the royal family, especially in relation to succession protocols, HRH entitlements, and protections under the sovereign grant. No decisions were made immediately, but documents were reviewed. Discussions were underway. One particularly sensitive issue involved Queen Elizabeth II. In her final years, the Queen had welcomed Harry and Meghan's children into her home, participated in family Zoom calls, and ensured their inclusion in the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. If she had known the truth, would she have responded differently? And if she had been deliberately kept in the dark, what did that say about the relationship Meghan and Harry truly had with the monarch? Some palace insiders suggested that Queen Elizabeth had suspicions but chose not to confront them. She was a woman of dignity, one source said. She preferred unity over scandal. She knew more than she ever let on, but chose silence for the sake of the institution. The silence from Buckingham Palace following the media explosion was calculated. As royal communications teams huddled, they faced a dilemma. Should they issue a statement denying involvement? Acknowledge the confession and distance the family from the drama? Or do what they had done before, remain silent, and let the fire burn out? In the end, they chose the third. No comment was the official line. But off the record, palace insiders made sure their feelings were known. Friendly media outlets received background briefings. Select reporters were tipped off about quiet legal reviews. Royal experts were subtly guided in their commentary. Without speaking publicly, the palace managed to steer the conversation, emphasizing betrayal, deception, and the quiet resolve of the institution to rise above personal scandal. The strategy was clear: let Harry and Meghan burn themselves out while the monarchy stood still. But even as the royal family attempted to weather the storm, one truth became undeniable: the institution had been bruised. The fairy tale of modern monarchy, diverse, inclusive, relatable, had been fractured. Trust between the Sussexes and the rest of the family had gone from strained to severed. And no matter how polished the future royal appearances might be, this moment would linger. It would linger in the public's mind. It would linger in every interview. It would linger in every future book, article, or speech about Harry, Meghan, and the choices they made. And it would linger inside the palace walls as a painful reminder that even royalty cannot escape the consequences of fiction built on secrets. Long before the cameras started rolling on Harry and Meghan's Netflix docuseries, long before the world watched their Oprah Winfrey interview, and even before the royal wedding dazzled millions, the most critical part of their story was already being carefully curated in secrecy: how Archie Harrison was brought into the world. The official line, at the time, was clear. Meghan was pregnant. Royal observers tracked her growing belly. Photographers caught her gently cradling her stomach in public appearances. The palace released statements about expected due dates. And when the baby arrived on May 6, 2019, the announcement, the photos, and the carefully managed press coverage all aligned with the version of events the public was meant to believe. But behind the scenes, according to newly surfaced documents and interviews with sources close to the Sussex household, the reality was far more complex. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, as Prince Harry later admitted in legal testimony, was born via gestational surrogacy, an arrangement that involved a donor egg and a separate surrogate mother who carried the child to term. The revelation, long suspected by some royal watchers due to the odd inconsistencies surrounding Meghan's pregnancy, has now been confirmed through leaked hospital records, internal legal correspondence, and testimony from medical professionals. The question many are asking now is, why the secrecy? According to multiple insiders familiar with the arrangement, Meghan and Harry opted for surrogacy due to a combination of personal health considerations and timeline logistics. Some speculate that Meghan faced medical complications that made natural pregnancy high risk or potentially unviable. Others suggest that the couple, eager to control the optics of their growing family while dealing with increasing media scrutiny, saw surrogacy as a safer, more private alternative. However, rather than disclose the surrogacy, the couple allegedly entered into a strict confidentiality agreement with the surrogate mother and all involved parties. The documents, some of which have now been leaked, included clauses prohibiting disclosure, mandating anonymity, and requiring participants to waive the right to discuss the arrangement publicly, even after the birth. From a legal standpoint, surrogacy laws vary widely depending on the jurisdiction. In the U.S., where the surrogacy took place, believed to be California, gestational surrogacy is legal and relatively straightforward. However, surrogacy arrangements involving high-profile individuals often involve additional layers of legal shielding, including non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, shell companies for payments, and multiple intermediaries to conceal identities. One leaked document, verified by two independent legal analysts, outlined a payment schedule to the surrogate through a third-party agency. The agency itself was registered to a discrete corporate entity in Delaware, known for its privacy protections. Additional clauses in the contract stipulated that no physical contact between the surrogate and the child would be permitted after birth, and that all medical records would remain sealed unless subpoenaed. These types of arrangements, while legal, are ethically fraught, especially when layered atop a public narrative designed to present the opposite reality. What deepens the controversy is the evidence suggesting that the surrogate gave birth not at the Portland Hospital in London, as the public was led to believe, but at a private facility in Santa Barbara. Several months before Meghan and Harry relocated there permanently. Flight records, security logs, and internal scheduling documents all point to a tightly managed operation that flew the couple discreetly back and forth from the UK in the months leading up to Archie's official birth announcement. Medical professionals who have examined publicly released footage and photos from Meghan's pregnancy now cite multiple inconsistencies, the frequently shifting bump size and shape, the way Meghan would sometimes press her hand against her belly in what experts call overcompensation, and the sudden changes in posture that defied typical third trimester movement. Though such observations were once dismissed as conspiracy theory, Harry's own words have now turned suspicion into confirmation. In his testimony, Harry stated plainly, the choice to use surrogacy was made with the full awareness of its implications. We sought to protect our child from the public spectacle and preserve a sense of normalcy. It was never meant to deceive, it was meant to shield. But the intent no longer matters to many critics. The deliberate attempt to stage a natural pregnancy, complete with photo ops, interviews, and documentaries, has, to them, crossed a moral and ethical boundary. Unlike private citizens, Harry and Meghan were global figures leveraging their story for influence, profit, and brand positioning. The argument from detractors is that if surrogacy had been acknowledged with dignity and truthfulness, the public may have understood, even respected, the choice. But by hiding it behind staged visuals and misleading narratives, the couple has now been accused of manipulation. Ethicists, lawyers, and media experts have since weighed in. Dr. Elaine Wentworth, a legal scholar at Columbia specializing in reproductive law, noted, "There's no legal requirement for public figures to disclose reproductive choices. But when you commodify that story, when you monetize it, you incur an ethical responsibility to the audience who's buying in." This distinction is at the heart of the backlash. Meghan and Harry didn't simply avoid questions about surrogacy. They leaned into the opposite. Every baby bump photo, every public appearance, every anecdote about pregnancy cravings or delivery planning reinforced the illusion. And those illusions weren't just shared, they were sold. Netflix, for example, devoted segments of the Sussexes' docuseries to parenthood, with emotional commentary from Meghan about becoming a mother. Viewers watched nursery preparations. Meghan shared reflections on the trauma of birth under media pressure. At no point was surrogacy mentioned. Instead, the production implied a very different journey, one that aligned with the traditional, relatable struggles of childbirth and early motherhood. The question now arises, did Netflix know? Sources within the streaming giant have remained tight-lipped, but anonymous production staffers claim there were quiet suspicions. One former editor reportedly remarked, "We were told to avoid certain questions, and some footage was pulled last minute." At the time, it felt like PR maneuvering. Now, it feels like something more. If Netflix executives were aware of the surrogacy and still moved forward without disclosure, they could face public relations damage, potential lawsuits, and deeper scrutiny about their role in perpetuating misleading narratives. Additionally, if contracts with publishing companies, sponsors, or documentary partners included declarations about the authenticity of family stories or life events, Harry and Meghan may face legal repercussions. Misrepresenting key biographical details could qualify as a breach of contract, fraud, or false advertising, depending on the jurisdiction and contractual language. Beyond legalities, however, the surrogate herself has become a point of intense media interest. Thus far, her identity remains protected, but sources indicate she was a professional surrogate with prior experience, selected through an agency specializing in high-profile clientele. She reportedly followed every clause of the confidentiality agreement and has refused media offers upward of 7 figures to break her silence. Some legal analysts suggest that if she were ever subpoenaed, especially in a divorce proceeding, her testimony could become public record, further complicating the situation. For now, the surrogacy arrangement stands as one of the most tightly controlled secrets in recent royal history. Yet with each new leak, document, or confession, it is becoming harder for Harry and Meghan to control the fallout. The legal trail doesn't just lead back to a private clinic or a hidden agency, it leads back to a conscious decision to sell a version of reality that was never real. And now, the world is asking, if this central part of their story was fiction, how much else have they been hiding?